The entire time I recorded this, I was deeply paranoid of other people hearing me, and so I choke multiple times in the audio. Bad times and bad feels. But it's okay because I'm slowly getting more used to the walls around here. Social anxiety is like my default state with other people. Hey guys, want a unique video title? Social anxiety is my default state. But it's a constant. It's somehow I can be fairly aloof to like physical pain and endangerment, but people and the way that they're perceiving me or like hearing me is the scariest thing in the world. Um, Somebody ought to write a book about that. You people said you wanted something searchable. You people said you wanted a way to find my channel when you look it up, instead of having to just look up Star and then not find anything. There you go. It's OsakaSyndrome now. We're called OsakaSyndrome. On the one hand, I dislike the fact that this name is more recognizable in the search engine, because that means more people will find my content, and as a result of that, find me. I will be more identifiable in the global internet ecosphere. But at the same time, I also really like what the name represents, because the idea with Star was that I would refer to myself as the name that I had been called by the friends in my friend group, who made up this name because I had went around calling myself briefly on the internet Joseph for a little while. I don't like necessarily having a coherent identity absolutely everywhere I go, or at least I didn't at the time. These days I don't experiment much with having all of these different identities times on here. Part of the appeal of the internet, part of what makes it great, is that you can be literally whoever you want to be online. You are not restricted by whatever paradigms might be in place depending on the group you're in. You're not restricted by whatever expectations people might have at you based on past experiences with you. You simply are. If people notice something about you, some consistencies that you'd rather like to remove, you can just change your username, change your name, etc. at that time, and then be a whole new person. And so, as I was suppressing my own gender identity, I wanted to experiment with different ways of referring to myself to see if they had any effect. Where, one theory I had was, well, maybe I don't want to be a girl, despite the fact that I feel so good when I'm referred to as one. Excuse me. Maybe I just want my name to be different. Maybe I just hate my name in general. I don't hate my name because it's a male name. And so I tried that, and that turned out to not work. That the whole time, the gender euphoria I experienced from being referred to with the proper gender and the proper name were a result of something larger that I seem to have been presenting for quite a number of years now, if you go back through my channel. Stuff like that. The internet can be neat to try and help figure these things out. So I called myself Joe, and then people started calling me Joe Star. But that's what I was calling myself on some parts of the internet. And one of those parts of the internet happened to be the only friend group I had at the time, and they started calling me Joe Star, named after the JoJo character. And so eventually Joestar just got shortened down to Star, and I was just called Star a bunch of times by those friends. And it stuck. And I wanted the symbolic meaning of calling myself Star because of the implications it had or surrounding the context, the context it came from. And so that's how we got the name. And then after that, we had Star Chan, because I came out as trans on YouTube, and I wanted to have that name associated with something else, like just just change it in any way I could in order to denominate a change in gender. And so I chose calling myself Star Chan because of that. But the baggage that name carried and the context that it carried, specifically in the context of my channel and why I chose it, I felt as though was hanging on to something in the past. It was holding on to a friend group of people who absolutely hate me because of the difference in political views that I hold from them. They're very like authoritarian leftist people, and I am not a leftist, and so they don't like me. They just don't. They ghosted me without even saying anything, without even giving a goodbye, even though after like 2 years they had said they were like my best friends, and it was one disagreement and then you're gone. And that's how leftists tend to be. Like, in my opinion, most leftists are not genuine friends. Leftists will speak to you because you have an ideological alignment with them. Now, that's not all of them, of course, but a lot of these leftist communities are incredibly shallow in that they will talk to you as if you are their friend, but because they're moralists, because moralism and the belief in objectivity or truth is the basis of most left-wing ideology, specifically materialism and stuff like Marxism and these, more... I don't want to say authoritarian because I don't think Marxism is inherently authoritarian, but the ways it has existed in the world certainly are. And so, while it may not be advocating for authoritarianism on a philosophical level, just the mere fact that it's advocating for the use of a state is inherently authoritarian. And we've seen that, all throughout history. And so, like, there's a degree to which I'm just not going to be able to connect with people like that because they literally believe that, dissidents like me, people who have a disagreement with them on the basis of policy or philosophy, should be killed. I mean, they've said as much. Many of these people may not say it in public, but they believe that dissidents should be killed. That's the left wing in a lot of cases. And it's why for, months and months now I've been continually saying I don't have an ideology, is because I don't feel comfortable associating with a group of people who, for someone like me who's mentally ill and has a number of strange or bizarre beliefs and ways of doing things, I wouldn't be able to fit into something like that, I mean, it goes back to the problem with democracy in general, is that, democracy is rule by normies. And authoritarianism's bad too, because it's still rule by normies, but it's just a rule by a minority of normies, whereas democracy is a rule by the majority of normies. In both cases, you're getting screwed over by the state if you're someone like me who doesn't fit into the majority. And so authoritarianism's always going to assert itself through, one group using its power over the other. And I happen to be in that group of people that is always going to get screwed over just because I'm too strange to properly fit in. And so those people I have a lot of problems with on just a personal level because of the way that I've been singled out and treated for having different views, and I'm perfectly willing to respect their views. I'm friends with people from all kinds of ideologies and backgrounds and belief systems. I don't really care what you believe in, as long as you respect me. That's all I ask, is that at the end of the day, I just want people to respect me, and I'll respect them. Obviously, if you refer to me as like a he or something like that, or by the wrong name, and you intentionally do so, now I don't mind mistakes. I can understand if like English isn't your first language and you're trying, but you're not able to get it across at first. No, I understand if you make mistakes here and there because you're used to referring to me one way, but like fundamentally speaking, if I'm making a request to be referred to as a certain way, and that's what I would like. That's what makes me comfortable. I don't see any reason for someone not to fulfill that request when it's easy. It's not that hard. It's just a change of language. And if you're simply unwilling to fulfill that request that makes me comfortable, I think it shows a lack of respect on your part. When, if you asked me to do something like that, I do it immediately for you, among other things. Like, it shows that you don't really appreciate me as a friend if you're unwilling to fulfill such a basic request. At that point, it shows that I'm willing to do more as a friend, and so, or just as a person you're interacting with. And so that's really all I ask. Is I ask for respect, mutual respect. I don't ask for people to agree with me on everything, most things. You could be like a fascist or something, and as long as you respected me enough to refer to me the way I would prefer to be referred to, that's fine. I don't have any problem with you having those views, even if they vehemently contradict mine. I think everyone has the right to think what they would like to think. And it can be really interesting to see people from, different ideologies who see the world in a different way. It's only frustrating to me when, they take that ideology and use it specifically against me to be disrespectful. So I've never had a problem with the authoritarian left Shonen Ronin guys, but they had a problem with me. And so that name, Star, the people I got it from, I'm at a huge disconnect with. And the reason I like the name OsakaSyndrome is because, for one, I've been using Osaka from Azumanga Daioh in all of my thumbnails for a little while now, and I started using her in videos and in thumbnails before that as like an Easter egg. Now I just went all out with it and started putting her among other characters and images continually in each thumbnail. And I like it as a pleb filter. I like the idea of it keeping out people who are like normies and wouldn't understand my content anyway. It's like, if it dissatisfies you to see those thumbnails, then good. Good. You shouldn't be watching my content. It's not for you. And it's sort of in an effort to get all of the Yoshika Miyako Reds off my lawn, as I've been talking about for a long time now. And I think the shift in the style of content that I've made has been a huge help in that. As it seems like my view counts have gone down a lot, and the people who are commenting are just the people who care about the stuff that I'm saying, or have something interesting to add. It's not really the people who are like just trying to mimetically shit on me and go, oh, look at this lol cow, LMAO. So I like the direction things are going. Another thing that the name is meant to represent is that it's this change in style of content. Or not necessarily style, but more like approach. I don't care nearly as much anymore about being quote-unquote good. I just care about making stuff that I would enjoy watching, or stuff that I would think is cool. So I've been coming at my videos from a more detached perspective of like, it doesn't matter what other people would think or how this would be perceived by anyone else. As long as I would watch this, then this is worth placing here. Or not even that, it's just that if I would enjoy making this, then it's worth placing here, and maybe someone else will enjoy watching it. It's not this big production where I need it to be anything more than a hobby. It's just a hobby. And calling myself OsakaSyndrome, having all the weird aesthetics and the titles that are completely incoherent. After I hit 2,000 subscribers, I started doing all of the weird titles because I wanted to get a bunch of those people to unsubscribe, because I felt as though normies were coming in. And what better way to get normies to leave than to be blatantly unappealing to most of them? And so far, it's been a pretty good strategy. And it's left the people who are just really dedicated around, the people who care about the things that I have to say and what I'm trying to do. I do see this as sort of a transition period. I don't think I've coherently figured out what my style is or will be yet, but I think this erupts in an era of much more experimentation, and because I'm more self-aware now than I used to be, should also allow me to be able to explore things that might be more complex or just more strange than some of the things I might have explored in the past. And I'm not focused on making videos all the time anymore either. It's more like, if I have this good idea for a video, I'm going to make it. It feels like in a lot of my old videos, I was just making a video every day because I was so depressed and I needed something to do. And now I would rather focus on releasing things specifically because I think it's something that's fun. That's really all I want to do. I just want the videos to be fun, and simultaneously taking that old baggage of all of the milieu that Star had, that the Star was tied up in. Is that even the right word? I don't even know. That was the first word that came to my mind. I'm gonna pretend like it was the right word. All this stuff that, okay, environment or setting, so I was using it correctly. Yeah, all of the stuff that Star was tied up in, and then the sense that Star Chan was just sort of like in addition onto an existing name that had already worn out its welcome, at least in this sphere. And I thought it ought to be time to rebrand in a way that more accurately represents what I'm doing at this time, which is just whatever I want. And when I changed my name to Star in April of 2019, that was essentially the same idea. Infinite Outlaw was essentially the same idea. I changed my name to Infinite Outlaw because I had a friend who meant a lot to me who just started calling me that because I made so many videos and I did whatever I wanted. And then I called myself Star as another symbolic representation of my friends, and also to represent being out of the algorithm, having a name that is outside of the system. And now I'm calling myself OsakaSyndrome because too many of my friends have trouble looking up my channel. And they need something that's easier to look up so they can more easily find it. And also because I've been associated with the character, the ditzy character from Azumanga Daioh, who's confused and strange. Yeah, that's me. Every time at nighttime in here, I always end up coming in to make some kind of canned food. So right now, I got clam chowder going in there because I'm way too lazy to just take out a pan and cook clam chowder if I'm cooking for myself. If I was cooking for another person, for one, I wouldn't be cooking something out of a can. I'd be taking out ingredients and trying to make something nice for somebody. But because I'm by myself, it's just clam chowder. It's clam chowder out of a can. Do you know how many of these things I've eaten over the last month? You can pretty easily, buy them at the store. What are these, $2? And there's tons of protein in them. And if you need lots of protein, quickly, and you don't want to put in effort, I don't want to put in effort, it's a great solution to the problem. So here I am. 2 a.m. I just woke up at 10 p.m. I've been waking up at 10 p.m. almost every other day now. Before I was recording that clip, this is what it always does. It always splatters on the thing, on the paper plate, before I take it out. And if I take it out too quickly, there's going to be more splattering, that it just starts popping before I open the thing up. But before I made that last clip, I was observing the water bottle that was right next to the microwave, and it was vibrating with the water moving back and forth as the microwave was going, and I suddenly became very paranoid that, ow, hot. I suddenly became very paranoid that all of a sudden this water would become contaminated with radiation. I have no idea if that's how that works. I doubt it does. I mean, why would you sell a consumer product for a kitchen that actively irradiates the things around it? That just doesn't seem like good optics for a company. But generally, when you have a company, no matter what the legitimacy of it is in regards to the law, but especially if it has legitimacy in regards to the law, the prerogative of those managing the company, or the business for that matter, is to make money. And the only way you're going to consistently make money from the same people is trust. Trust is your self-interest. It's not out of the goodness of your heart. It's not to help random Joe Bob down the street who you're never going to meet once in your life, who may have an amazing story about his family or whatever, but you've never seen him before, so you can't perceive any of that as you're acting. It's about whether or not Joe Bob is going to come back to buy your stuff again 2 years from now. And so it's an imperative for you, as someone who wants to make consistent business, to not poison them, to make sure that they're in good enough spirits, that they don't have cancer or something like that going down the line, to continually purchase your products. It doesn't make sense to me that something like that would occur, at least not to any significant or noticeable degree, not to an extent larger than what probably already happens from other forms of radiation, like X-rays or something. I don't know. I don't know how any of it works. But I have thoughts like that anyway. The other day, I was walking in the kitchen, and I was reminded there's a giant gas canister in here. Now, this is a thought that I have pretty much constantly, and it's only been something that I've been able to more effectively deal with since 2020 has started. It's bothered me less. Really, since the end of December, it's bothered me less, although I can't quite objectively measure my feelings in December, just because I was so overwhelmed by the prospect of potentially going back to school after my kidney stone had been recovered from. But that gas canister, if treated the wrong way, can just explode. And the whole house would be exploded at that point. Dead. Boom. Gone. You're not alive anymore. It's a pretty terrifying prospect. To a human being is someone who, like, even if you just have, like, 6 years, like, even if you've just been alive for 6 years, there's so many intricate complexities that make up your experience with life up to that point, so many different thoughts and feelings that you've already had, and all of that can be gone just in a moment, just because, someone turned the oven on wrong, and there's a fire spread over to the other side of the room, and then it explodes. Thoughts like that all the time. But I only stopped worrying about it after I came really close to dying in December of last year. Because as I was passing out, with the very real sensation, the real sense that I was going to leave this world and not come back, it was so terrifying in the moments leading up to it that I had to psych myself into being able to accept it. I went from saying, I'm not afraid of death, there's no logical reason to be afraid of death, doesn't make any sense, to now being viscerally met with the reality, the fear of being dead, and having to come to terms with that in real time as I, feel like my heart is exploding, and are experiencing, various other disorienting things that you've probably heard me talk about before, if you know that story. So, that fear started to subside after that experience of having to come to terms with it, having to experience it, having to make myself accept it in the moment. Because while my life did not end, the experience of almost having it end, or feeling as though it would end, and then having to accept that fact, as real as that experience was for me, those memories don't end up going away. They kind of hang around. They have a lasting influence. The realness of that experience continues to influence your reactions to things as time goes on, even though the result of the experience was not ultimately what you thought it would be. And so, you look at people with PTSD. I mean, I have PTSD, but for other things. I don't really like talking about it. Or really anyone with any kind of trauma. Towards a near-death situation. It's that residual effect of feeling as though you're going to die, you're dead right there, not dying, and your brain still having those memories that are compartmentalized in your head, and now being, utterly terrified by them at all times, because that the realness of that experience of being dead is there, even though it doesn't match up with what the reality is. And so you're living in this constant fixation with optimizing the world around you to have as few dangers as possible, looking all the time around at what the people are doing and what they might potentially do to you, scared, vigilant, because that memory is so intense and so complex that you can't fully compartmentalize it, at least not for the time you're experiencing those symptoms. I get a lot of nightmares about stuff that's happened in the past. I think one of the main reasons why my insomnia is as bad as it is, or sometimes I'll be awake for days on end, or end up sleeping for only a couple hours, multiple times, and go back and forth, is because, and also getting bad quality of sleep, that's the other one. It's because the pain associated with laying down and just being alone with my thoughts when they get as bad as they do, when they race as much as they do, or of knowing that I'm going to have another nightmare and I'm going to wake up again. Maybe on some kind of subconscious level that's keeping me from being able to sleep. I mean, I've woken up with panic attacks like multiple times before. So it shouldn't be too radical of a thing to say that maybe the brain is just in unconscious preparation for that event, and that fear is making it difficult to sleep. I don't really know. I just know it makes life more difficult when you're trying to exist in polite society with people who don't experience the same problem. And I also think that we can draw a parallel between this negative internalization of those, traumatic events with a more positive internalization of traumatic events, because the overarching theme is an overarching narrative. It's the fact that you experience that, and then it continues to affect your behaviors as things go on based on your interpretation of the events. And I think when I almost died, the fact that I was able to accept what was happening as it was occurring right until the end, that I was able to make peace with where I was, allowed me to, when I woke up, live with that peace walking alongside me. Because that peace was made then and there when I thought it was over. When I had the visceral, physical, and psychological sense that it was over. It's difficult to describe how much traumatic and physical and psychic pain I was in. I thought it was over. I had to accept that. And I've still accepted that. Because, while cognitively speaking, those paranoias of stuff exploding, people killing me outside, attacking me, etc., are still there, they don't control my behaviors anymore. They don't cause me to have an adverse physical reaction like a knee-jerk response or something like that. It's more like I consciously recognize that those things could happen, and they're persistent patterns of thought due to my own paranoia, but they don't exert any degree of control over me. At least not to a noticeable degree. That's a massive change I've noticed ever since then. I like this soup.